Hello friends, welcome to the Soviet Journey channel. In this video, I wanted to give you information about the studies on climate change in the Soviet Union. Studies on climate change, which is a current issue today, continue unabated in all countries. Based on these, assumptions and scientific theories are produced about what climate changes in certain periods will cause in the future. Soviet scientists, who have conducted extensive studies on the Asian climate in the past, have achieved great successes that shed light on this subject today. Climate studies, which gained momentum especially after World War II, were used practically in scientific activities, contributing to the development of the socialist economy. The Soviet Academy of Sciences supported many projects carried out on this subject. Studies on climate change and studies on the transformation of nature in the wide geography of the Soviet Union have made great progress. After this summary, let's take a broader look at the history of climate studies in the Soviet Union. Interest in climate and research on climate systems has a long history in the Soviet Union and has found strong application in the wider Soviet sphere. Scientific studies on the subject were at a very developed level in the Soviet Union. It can be said that the harsh climatic conditions affecting the Soviet geography were an important factor in this. Climatologist Paul Lidov clearly expressed this situation by saying the following on the subject: "The country generally lacks heat. Where the temperature is at a sufficient level, it lacks moisture." It is therefore not surprising that the Soviet Union sought ways to squeeze every last drop of moisture from its poor climate reservoir. Working under this necessity, Soviet climatology achieved high levels of success. Climate change studies continued rapidly because of the necessity of using and transforming nature in order to develop socialism, increase production, and improve the well-being of the Soviet people. The use of scientific advances in the development of the socialist economy received broad support from the Communist Party and the Soviet Academy of Sciences. After the Stalin era, efforts to prove that Soviet science did not lag behind Western science were also reflected in the field of climate, and especially during the Cold War, Soviet climate science competed with Western studies. Because climate science was not a field of science with high strategic value in the fight against imperialism, which was one of the main lines of Soviet policy, it attracted less attention than fields such as nuclear science, physics, medicine, and biology. However, the Program for Scientific Regulation of Nature, called Stalin's Plan for the Transformation of Nature, implemented in the 1950s, paved the way for Soviet climate science and brought with it many scientific discoveries. In line with this plan, irrigation canal networks were established in the steppes of the south of the Soviet Union and the deserts of Central Asia, lands were shaped, countless trees were planted, and measures were taken against erosion. With these comprehensive transformations, scientific research on the climates affecting the Soviet geography accelerated. In the post-war period, scientific disciplines were created in many areas regarding climate. The emphasis on applied sciences, especially in the Soviet Academy of Sciences, contributed to the development of independent studies on climate change during this period. In 1970, there were 18 scientific institutions conducting climate research. Many observations were made regarding the possible climatic consequences of nuclear tests carried out in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Soviet scientists meticulously investigated the links between nuclear weapons and climate. International cooperation was made to prevent a possible nuclear war. For example, Soviet scientists played important roles in the international initiative assessing the state of knowledge on the possible environmental consequences of nuclear war undertaken by the International Council for Science and participated in relevant workshops and meetings. Soviet climate scientists developed relations with Western countries based on concepts of mutual scientific respect. Russian translation committees were established by organizations such as the American Geophysical Union and the American Meteorological Society, and efforts were made to exchange ideas. These organizations published articles on Soviet climate science. The International Geophysical Year project, spearheaded by the Soviet Union and lasting from July 1957 to December 1958, facilitated the exchange of ideas between the Western world and the Soviet Union. Many scientific events were held with the participation of 67 countries. These developments enabled climate studies to move strongly towards supporting the progress of the socialist economy. Two important meetings on the problem of climate transformation were held in Leningrad in April 1961 and June 1962. These initiatives were organized by the Budyko main geophysical observator with the participation of the Soviet Geographical Institute and the Institute of Applied Geophysics. These meetings attracted great attention because they included documents on historical climate change, temperature change, polar ice caps, and regional climate change. Articles published in academic journals of the period shed light on those days. For example, Soviet scientist Lev Semenovich Berg published numerous articles on climate and climate processes and became an original reference source for understanding the Earth's surface during the founding of the Soviet Union. Berg wrote many original studies of the remote tundra and northern forest areas of the Northern Hemisphere, from steppe regions to climate zones. Similarly, many articles describing the post-war Soviet geography were published by Grigory Agranat. Agranat produced maps of the Soviet climate and increased people's interest in climate science. In the 1970s, many studies were conducted by Oleg Drozdov on the combination of planned economy with climatic activities. Soviet climatologists Mikhail Budyko and Gerasimov published a joint statement at a special symposium on the temperature and water regime of the Earth's surface held at the meeting of the Third Congress of the Geographical Society. The article, published with the title Heat and Water Balance on the Earth's Surface, General Physical and Problem of Transformation of Nature, caused a stir at the time. The studies on the heat and water balance of the world advocated in this article were the focus of Soviet geographical sciences at the time and were supported by the Soviet Academy of Sciences. In 1972, Budyko published his article The Influence of Man on Climate, which included observations of future global temperature increases due to human activities. This publication is considered a major milestone in climate science because of its emphasis on the meaning of past climates to predict future climate conditions. Similar to these studies, Mikhail Lyakov, working at the Soviet Air Climatology Institute, investigated atmospheric pollution and conducted research on its effects on health, in addition to its natural and economic sources. Concerns about the negative effects of human activities, such as atmospheric pollution, became more frequent in scientific research in the 1950s and 1960 seconds, in addition to general discussions. The issue of humankind's influence on meteorological processes was directly addressed in Evgeny Fedorov's article published in the journal Problems of Philosophy in 1958. In this work, Fedorov discussed such phenomena as artificial cloud formation and climate regulation possibilities, and emphasized the possible effects of artificial changes on nature along with the developing economic influence in the world. The Soviet Union is among the founders of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which was established in 1988 and still operates today. USSR played an influential role in establishing this organization and developing discussions on creating future climate change scenarios. Soviet scientists intensively participated in the activities of international organizations working in this field, such as the World Meteorological Organization, and established areas of study on climate change together with other socialist countries. Soviet climatology was extremely successful in studying the weather phenomena affecting the country and the types of climate seen on Earth. Climatology, by definition the average of atmospheric phenomena over a wide area over many years, was constantly studied because it shaped Soviet geography and closely controlled life. Today, this scientific knowledge is still used and its legacy is taught in universities both in Russia and in the former Soviet republics. Yes, comrades, in this video, I have prepared a series of documentary-like information about Soviet climate science. I hope you liked it and that we shed light on this issue. I publish many videos on lesser-known topics about the Soviets. You can find lots of content on our Soviet Journey channel. So don't forget to follow and subscribe to our channel. See you in other videos. Goodbye for now. Stay in solidarity.